Rouken Glen Park, situated in the south side of Glasgow, has been a popular visiting spot for over 100 years. I wonder how many of those visitors know the history of the park. Very few, I suspect. Come with me and let's take a trip to a bygone age. They would travel from all parts of the city on tram cars which passed along Rouken Glen Road next to the park entrance. The days of the tram car are of course long gone, but today visitors still arrive in considerable numbers to enjoy this wonderful attraction. Rouken Glen was originally a family estate owned by the Crum family, who owned a large textile print works in nearby Thornliebank. The Crums bought the estate in 1852, originally to build a paper mill there. However, as no investors could be found, Walter Crum decided to make Rouken Glen his place of residence and rebuilt the mansion house there to grand Victorian standards. In 1893, the Crums rented the estate to Cameron Corbett, later to become Lord Roallan, who thereafter purchased it in 1905. In 1906, he presented it to Glasgow Corporation as a gift for the people of Glasgow. In May of that year, the park opened its gates to the public. It was a runaway success and attracted huge crowds. There were bandstands, tea rooms and entertainers. During the war years, large areas of the park and the mansion house were requisitioned by the army. However, they were not the most careful custodians. Sadly, the house was left derelict for many years, and due to lack of funding, the decision was made to demolish this wonderful building in 1967. Today, only an open space remains where the mansion house once stood. The park continued to be run by Glasgow Corporation, later known as Glasgow City Council. All was well until 1983, when the council decided, for financial reasons, to close the park. Fortunately, Eastwood District Council were able to secure it on a 125-year lease, and it was operated by them until 1995, when East Renfrewshire Council came into being. And so today people are still able to enjoy the park. When visiting, a good place to start any day is at the visitor centre, housed in the former park shelter. Here you can find out more about the history of Rouken Glen and its many attractions. Rangers are usually on hand to deal with any questions you may have.
Hello, I'm a park ranger of Rouken Glen. I work part-time at the weekends, 2 days a week. My main job is to patrol the park, make sure the infrastructure is okay, there's no hazards for the public, make sure there's nobody drinking alcohol outside as well, and also dropping litter and dog fouling. Make sure that people don't leave their mess after their dogs, and just generally be about and have a presence in the park so people can approach you. Any problems, that's what we're here for.
The most popular area is the boating pond. The pond was opened in 1924. The original curling pond was enlarged and improved to the large boating pond you see today. It was a big attraction to visitors who could hire rowing boats or cruise round the pond on the large motor launch. Today the appeal of boating has diminished, and now the old boathouse has been converted into a popular restaurant and cafe.
I've been coming into Boaters for 25 years, when it was one of these little quaint tea rooms with the checkered tablecloths and the waitresses in the pinafore, and all they actually had was biscuit, cake, tea, coffee, and it was delightful. It was old worldly. After it closed down, it opened up as a coffee shop. And it was, I think, a young couple that had it. It barely lasted a year. It just didn't take off. I don't know. My favourite story is the first time I came in, I had my coffee and I left. I had to come back 5 minutes later and pay them, and they let me walk out, and I was the only customer in the place. They actually let me walk out without paying. Marco and Christine took over about 8 years ago, and they have spent a lot of money, a lot of work. They've extended the place, and it's a very, very busy place. It caters a lot to families. It caters to mothers groups with children, and their problem really is the number of times that they have too many staff on and have to send them home.
After a refreshing break, a stroll around the pond is a pleasant way of burning off some calories. Leading off the pond is a path that takes you down to a spectacular waterfall. Part of the waterfall is actually a dam wall which was built to store water for the old Thornley bag textile printwork. The enterprising Mr. Crumb, in buying this estate, had eyes on controlling the water of the old house burn which flows through the area. This water was essential for the operation of his industry. Opposite the dam, the burn cascades down a natural waterfall. At this point you can explore several paths which take you down the glen. A particular feature of the Glen walks is the different variety of trees to be found. Limes, beech, oak, birch, sycamore and conifers are all to be found here. Further down the glen you come to the remains of a small grain mill which was called Rouken Mile. From this, Rouken Glen got its name. Emerging from the glen, you come to the walled garden created by Walter Crumb. This is how the garden looked in 1941. you are finished exploring the park, pop in to the nearby Rouken Glen Garden Centre.
The garden center started year 1985, and the concept was the East Renfrewshire Council wanted to rent the piece of ground for some environmental use, and the best thing could be the garden center. We have never looked back. We have worked very hard on it, and still working hard. And the competition is tough, but the quality and the service has survived us very well.
Today, Rouken Glen Park continues as an important area of natural beauty and relaxation. It is always an eye-catching and exciting place to visit, and this lovely area will always command the full attention of its visitors.
One of the things I do remember about seeing was after the tramway had come through Giffnock and looped round back into town by Thornley Bank. At first it came to a stop at Eastwood Toll and then went back into town. Later it went down to about Rouken Glen's first gate and then went back into town. And then much later on it did the whole loop round through Thornley Bank and Pollokshaws. But I can remember seeing what seemed like hundreds of children hanging out of these tram cars coming to Rouken Glen, most especially if they were on a trip of some kind. But every weekend these tram cars were packed, and that was something that we all remember seeing. When I remember it first, it was not in Rouken Glen Road, because Rouken Glen Road was not so called. It was called Eastwood Mains Road West. Eastwood Mains Road East being the one that goes up to Clarkston. So that was the name of it then. And we used to go, as children, we were taken for Sunday walks. We would go down this Eastwood Mains Road West, and we would go down, and there was a blue painted cafe where the garage is now at Spears Bridge, and the treat was to go in there and have ice cream. That was part of the treat. It was the paint was peeling and it was faded blue, but it's a vivid memory I have, and you went up 2 steps into it, so it was a kind of shack place. That was one of the memories of treats at Rouken Glen.